Hello and welcome to Robin Minds. My name is Hero Daniels and I'm coming to you live from our Abuja studio. It feels really good to escape the Lagos traffic. It's only in Lagos that your wife would give birth, and by the time you get to the hospital to see your child, the child is already 5 months old because of Lagos traffic. It's been a very dramatic week, and as a young Nigerian, I'm asking myself, who really obeys the law in this country? From everyday traffic violations to how security agencies and public institutions enforce rules, there's a pattern. Those in power often act as if the law doesn't apply to them, while ordinary citizens face immediate consequences for the same actions. Today, we're going to explore why this happens, what it says about governance and accountability in Nigeria, and how the culture of selective enforcement affects both institutions and citizens. This conversation is about law. It's about power, privilege, and what it really takes to make the rule of law work for everyone. And to discuss Nigeria and the rule of selective obedience is a public affairs analyst, Olufemi Bitoye. Welcome to the program.
Good afternoon, Hero. And please, when are you going back to Lagos? Because really, we don't want Abuja to be overcrowded with Lagos people.
No, the truth of the matter is, anytime we come to Lagos, anytime we come to Abuja rather, we appreciate how well planned the city is, the road networks, you guys don't have traffic. And of course, Lagos is also really great. It's just that we have a population of over 22 million people. So,
and because we're in Abuja, we're more or less, we are of civil obedience. We follow the law here in Abuja.
Okay. You know what? Let's just dive straight into it. So, for the average Nigerian, what does obeying the law mean for the average Nigerian? Okay,
so for the average Nigerian, obeying the law, it's following the laid down law and order via constitution, the civil way on how to engage. And of course, it's about living in peace and harmony with your neighbor. Obeying the law gives law and order. So if you want that to sustain, you have to just know that, okay, these are the stipulated things we are told to do and what not to do. Follow that and everybody will be fine. Obeying the law, as simple as that.
Now, do you think the rule of law is selective in Nigeria?
Obviously, it is selective because over time we've seen that the rule of law, gravitates towards the powerful, the high and the mighty. So, it's also believed that there are two sets of laws in Nigeria. One for the poor and one for the rich and the powerful. So, and that is why Nigeria as a nation, we are where we are today.
Okay, let's now talk about what I like to call the anyhowness of a Nigerian that has sort of made it. When you begin to make a bit of money, you start thinking of how to buy Prado jeeps, probably like get some policemen to follow you around. And then you now see that typically from government officials down to people that just have a bit of money, it's as if they don't even obey the very basic laws, like, let's say, for example, traffic. So we've seen a case of traffic violation severally. You go to a filling station and you want to jump the queue because you believe that you are not supposed to queue up with the everyday Nigerian. So how did we get this wrong? And why does this attitude persist? Okay,
so it's a system problem. And when a system is faulty, just like you have an operating system on your phone or your laptop, the moment it is faulty, there is bound to be malfunction. There won't be efficiency. So we got here based on the fact that over the years, culture of impunity, culture of anyhowness, culture of I have power, I can get away with anything, begin to trump rule of law. And when such happen in any society, growth and development will become something we pay lip service to. And that's why we are here as a nation. I mentioned it earlier. Because when you know that basic things, see, for any nation, growth and development, law and order is very, very paramount. I think I was watching His Excellency Soludo, the governor of Anambra State. He said when he became governor, one of the first things he did was to meet the former governor of Lagos State, Babatunde Fashola. And one thing he told him is that law and order, that if you want to govern, if you want to be successful, one thing that is very paramount is what? Law and order. If there's no law and order, we can't have a functioning system. So this shows a deeper rot in our system because there is no law, there is no order, so there's no way a system can function. It's just like it's a system that is continually jig. There's no way you can have an appropriate reaction and action in our system.
So what you're trying to say is that this impunity that we experience is as a result of a weak system weak institution?
So, I've always of the opinion that what we have in Nigeria is weaker institution. And sometimes we hero worship, of course, not your name. So we looked at, oh, Femi is coming, he's so disciplined, let's put him as the INEC chairman, we'll make it work. We've forgotten that Femi is just a bit of the system. So until we look at our institutions, so we need to look at institutional power and empower our institution. If not, the culture of impunity will come, it will continue. Because when such person comes and go, there's little to what he can do. Because his own immediate subordinates, they don't believe in that vision or the process which you want to take and achieve whatever you want to achieve. But when the institution are empowered, when you know that when you have anything to do with the Nigerian police force, there is a protocol. It has nothing to do with either you are the governor, you are high, you are low, you have money. There is a process, a standard operating process which they will follow. People will begin to respect the rule of law. People will begin to respect the system. But when we have weaker institutions, anybody believes that when I get there, I can get away with anything when I have my money.
Okay, now speaking about institutions, there's a hot topic on the streets, like some people would say it, the debacle between Nyesom Wike, Federal Minister of FCT, and of course the Naval Officer Lieutenant Ahmed Yerima. And then the debate is, now, let's not be sentimental about what exactly happened in terms of the conversation and the words that were used in the conversation. Now, the debate was the formal naval officer that had the land did not have appropriate approval, aside from an 18-year-old document. And the officials were merely carrying out their jobs, and they had to call the minister because they were being harassed by the military. Now, on the other hand, you know, the military, of course, the military is saying they only answer to the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, which is President Tinubu. So, in such a case now, what are your thoughts on the incident?
You see, the incident has generated a lot of controversy in Nigeria. But one thing that I could pick from the whole of the scenario is that it shows a deeper dysfunction in our system. So it shows that ego, hierarchy dysfunction, and personalized power trumped law and order, protocol and power in our society. Because if you looked at it from any angle you want to look at it, either from the angle of the Minister of FCT or from the angle of the naval officer, it shows that because both of them are trying to show, okay, I have ego, I have the right to protect my land, though regardless of whatever the document looks like. So it's still a system problem. Because if it is not ego, if it is not power hierarchy and somebody trying to show that I can do this, we know what to do. We know what the Lord says. We know that civil obedience is key to any growth and development in any society. I could have well just say, okay, maybe because I know probably anybody in this country, that this is a green area, and the next thing I want to do is I want to erect a structure there.
So who is wrong in this case? Was it the FCT Minister or the naval officer?
It is not a question of who is right or who is wrong. Because you see, this will still repeat itself. This is not the first time we've had different confrontations with either with governors, with an officer of the Nigerian police force, or even a Nigerian army. We've had it over time, and we will continue to have such, because I said it shows a deeper dysfunction. It shows that there is ego. It shows that there is what? Hierarchy malfunction. So people don't understand who they are, what the Lord says about who they are, and how they need to carry out their lawful existence. So it's not a question about, we can say this person is wrong, we can say this person is wrong. It's a vicious circle. We will still go back to it. But then, if we're able to fix the system, so if you know that regardless of who you are, former president, former naval officer, you know that there is a rule, there is a law and order you need to follow. There will be peace in the nation. And no matter who you are the sitting president, the sitting vice president. See, we need to understand that we need to institutionalize law and order from Aso Rock to Area 1, from Aso Rock to Bariga in Lagos. So until then, we will just continue to talk about who is wrong, who is right, and people will begin to, take side based on how they feel, based on sentiment, or based on whatever, anything they want to take. But then, we need to sit down as a nation.
Okay.
And have a deeper conversation with ourselves.
Okay. I wanted to go deeper into the particular situation, but perhaps you might not be in a situation to explain further, because this is a case of documents were needed, documents were not provided, and then the officials were not allowed to get into the premises to carry out their duties because naval officers were guarding the particular land. I don't know if you get my point.
Yeah, I do.
So it's in such a situation now, does that mean that if you are part of the military, you are exempted from obeying the civic laws, because this is a civic law?
I'll just take on your question, which was you said last. It's so clear. The military obey the civil law. 100%. The moment the military fails to obey the civil law, there'll be anarchy. That's when we begin to talk about different things that happen in our nation. So until we begin to, like I said, it's still a system problem. If a military person knows that, no matter, and all these things, they trickle down. That is when you see someone will complain that, okay, I was just going, all because of the way I drive or something. You see a military person start, why are you koboko? Because it's still a system problem, because it trickled down from the up. There's a greater dysfunction from the up. It trickled down to even, how will I put it, to an officer, a recruit, and the way a recruit sees other Nigerian, which of course, I don't understand the word bloody civilian. Yeah, we might be bloody civilian, but at the same time, we are both human beings, a citizen of this country, which we all deserve equal respect. So also, if you're a government official, you must understand hierarchy and structure. You must understand line of communication. You must also understand that if you want to deal with this peculiar situation, because, as a leader, you must be creative in dealing with incidences. Know who to talk to. Everything is not about confrontation. You must know how to navigate your way when having conversation, especially in a moxie situation like this.
All right. That leads me to my next point. You made a very valid point. We're in the democratic dispensation. However, the trauma of the military rule and the military era still lives on. You just made an example how the typical Nigerian would feel intimidated just by seeing the military officer as opposed to feeling safe. So how do you think we can fix that mindset?
Okay, so since it's a mindset problem, what we need is reorientation. You see, there's a lot of conversation we need to have as a nation. We need to first of all understand that Nigerian first. And in as much as we are having the conversation of Nigerian first, we must understand that our allegiance is to the flag and our country. So then we need to now begin to, agency of government, let's say like the National Reorientation Agency, must begin to engage citizens to understand who they are, the role of a citizen, and what you need to do in the structure called Nigeria. As a civilian person, as a military personnel, as a serving minister, as whatever capacity you are, we need to understand our role in nation building, orientation and reorientation. Because it's a continuous, because even the Holy Scripture says, faith cometh by hearing, and continuous hearing through the word of God. So you must continue to let people know, have the same conversation that, see, this is who we are. And that is why do we have American being, we all want to be like America, everybody wants to go America, because an average American are so proud of their country, they're so proud of their flag. So until we understand that this is our country, we must do everything, what's in our own capacity as an individual, right, to make Nigeria work.
But do you think that is easy, considering the fact that our leaders, some of our leaders, are not setting the right example? You see a government official literally going against the traffic. Now, I can understand why perhaps you need to put on the sirens and you need to get to a particular duty on time. However, you see situations where they are literally going against traffic, This is just but an example of how our leaders are setting bad examples. So how do you now expect the citizens to emulate being a good Nigerian when they can literally see that there are no consequences for their actions as long as they make money and they make a name in the society?
Thank you. So there are no consequences for actions. So then you've now looked at it, the society reflects, mirror the leader. So it's easier for an average Nigerian when you see your leader breaking the traffic lights, you see your leader passing one way. One way or the other, if you look around, there's no VIO, there's no road safety, you quickly want to do that. So it's a system problem. So what we need to do is, there's what we call culture. Culture is the software of the mind, which when inputted, it's usually problematic to remove. You understand? I'm talking from behavioral science now. That culture is the software of the mind, that when inputted is usually problematic to remove. So the culture we have, the culture of impunity, the culture of anyhowness, we need to remove it from the leadership. That's why I said earlier on that we must have this body language, we must have this conversation from Aso Rock to Area 1, from Aso Rock to Bariga, from Aso Rock to Nembe, until we begin to have that kind of conversation, until we begin to have that change. I think we're still joking. So that culture needs to change. Yeah, it's problematic to change, but you know, I always make a simple example when it comes to changing something problematic. It's like having all these, all this round fish, this dry fish. You know, if you want to straighten it, when you just take it and try to straighten it with force, what will happen? Everything will scatter. It will just but then when you put it inside water, you are now rubbing it a bit. You're rubbing it. You're taking your time. Before you know it, it might not become straight, but before you know it, it will open up, start giving you an arc form. That is the way the reorientation and culture change will happen in Nigeria. It has to be systematic, but we have to start now.
Okay, now this all sounds really good and fancy, but let's talk practicality. Currently, the three arms of government, executive, legislature, and the judiciary, some people of the school of thought that is just one arm of government we have right now. People are doubting the independence of the judiciary. People are doubting the independence of the legislative arm of government. As the ruling party, some people are of the opinion that they've sort of harmonized it. And as much as some people would also say it's a good thing in the sense that it might help deliver projects faster, other people would say no. When there is a conversation that needs to be had and people have cases to put forth to either the judiciary or the legislature, it is being controlled politically. Now, what are your thoughts on how we can enforce the law truly without the law being selective, especially when it comes to political matters?
Okay, so when it comes to political matters, the truth is we want harmony between the three arms of government, most especially between the legislative arm and the executive arm, because that is what will drive development. However, the legislative arm of government must also be able to show their independence, just as the way we expect the judiciary. We don't expect to have a KOC in a dysfunctional system, just as we have it now. You know, we are so used to dysfunctionality that we feel that the moment there is harmony, there must be something to trigger it. No, but in a way that we want them to act, we want them to work in unison, but maintaining their independence. That's why people talk about the independence of the judiciary. Okay, let the National Judicial Commission have their own funds without the interference of the executive.
So you did make mention that the moment we have harmony, it looks like there's something wrong. Are you now saying that, let's even be particular, are you saying that the judiciary arm of government has lived up to expectation in this particular dispensation, especially when it comes to cases that are concerning the opposition?
So I won't take it as cases concerning the opposition. I'll take it as cases concerning an average Nigerian. See, there's a lot of work we need to do with our judiciary. And there is a need for, I think when the new CJN was appointed, I suggested some certain things he needed to do, because there's a need for hard conversation. Let us have like kind of a national conversation on our judiciary, because an average Nigerian does not, especially from the heart of the opposition, don't trust the judiciary. Why? Rightly so, because if you looked at the pattern or the body language from the judiciary, you begin to question their ability. So, but however, we cannot throw away the baby and the bathwater. There is still glimpse of hope. Yeah, there's still a lot of things that needs to be done, because sometimes justice delay is justice denied. You see some cases go on and on and on for 10, 15 years, and even you see sometimes the plaintiff or whatever they are being called, even they will die along the line. However, we need to understand that working in harmony doesn't mean there shouldn't be executive interference. That is certain. However, the opposition government also, the opposition also should also come out with, real issues when you want to have conversation with people in government. You can't just throw emotions. See, emotions will not get you what you want. bias or trying to whip up public sentiment will not always get you what you want. But when you have the real conversation, when you have issues, bring it out to the public opinion.
Right.
People will see it and they will have this conversation. And, you know, it is still a function of we coming together as a system, understanding that either we like it or not, the judicial and executive arm, they have a way they align.
Yeah.
However, the judiciary must always maintain its independence.
Sadly, we're out of time. There's so much that we need to talk about, but thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Robin Mind
and
continues.
please let me know when you're going back to Lagos so I can book your ticket. So we don't want Abuja to be overcrowded.
Thank you very much. Robin Mind continues after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Robin Mind. Before we went on the break, we were talking about the anyhowness of Nigerians and, of course, how sometimes we see what we'll call selective justice. Right about now, let's talk about men. If you're a man watching me right now, I want to ask you, how are you? Because we live in a society where it seems like men's voices are not heard. When you want to be an emotional person, when you want to express your emotion, you want to express yourself, the question will be, no be man you be. So I ask you again, how are you? As we celebrate International Men's Day, we just want to spotlight how men are being treated in the society and what is the concept of toxic masculinity. If a man expresses his emotion, does that make him weak? Does that make him not man enough? Discuss breaking up the man up myth. In the studio is a legal practitioner, Babayemi Olaniyan. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm going to ask you, my brother, we're celebrating International Men's Day. How are you?
You know, it's been long someone asked me that question, but I'm fine. And how are you too?
I'm surviving. I'm surviving. So why is it that when men try to express themselves or to express their shortcomings, they are being shut up?
Okay, thanks for having me. First of all, I think it's the culture that we found ourselves in Nigeria. So a man is brought up as strong, dependable provider, right? So you are growing up with that mindset. So you're growing up doing that. Okay, emotions aside, let me do the hustle, make the money, provide for my family, and hiding somewhere in between is happiness, that the man is searching for. And most men are now taught that your fulfillment comes from providing for your family. So it's when the man might find fulfillment from providing for his family. Most men now, and that's why you see a lot of places, recreational centers are bubbling at night, because most men are found that as their place of finding happiness after providing for their families.
Okay. You just made a salient point, but we're going to get back to that. Why a lot of men would rather go to the beer parlors after work as opposed to driving home. So we'll talk about the family system, how men's mental health are, especially when you're a married man. But that would be a later conversation. Right now, let's talk about the concept of toxic masculinity. This is a phrase that is being thrown around at every single opportunity. Can we define, in your own terms, what toxic masculinity is first?
So toxic masculinity will be a system where a man is not able to show his emotions, and if he shows them, is portrayed as a man that is not strong or a weak man, right? So a man is not allowed to show his true emotions, show his true feelings, say them out, maybe even cry, right? I mean, if a man cries, they're like, what is wrong with you? Why are you crying?
But is that toxic? You know, from your definition, it sounds like that is not toxic at all. From your definition, it sounds like that is healthy.
Right, so it now depends on the man. So and different men have different ways they deal with their issues. Some men would maybe cry it out quietly, right? Some men would use anger and shout. Some men would just go and take a drink, right? So different men have different ways but the toxicity comes from how people interpret it, right? So it's not about the man himself. The man might be fine, but someone just says, "Why are you doing like this? You are doing like someone that doesn't know what he's doing." That is when it now becomes toxic. So the man might be fine on himself. The man might want to cry, and after crying, he might feel okay. But then someone else says something that says that is not how men behave. So there's a way men behave there's a way our culture have created a system. We have put a placard: men do not cry. Men do not show emotions. Men do not do this. So that's where the toxicity comes from.
I like how your mindset is, and I like how you defined it, because it shows the kind of person you are, and you found a way to like just say it from your perspective. Now, let me give you a glimpse of what the general perspective of toxic masculinity is. Now, the general perspective is, if as a man you exert any form of authority, right? Let's say, for example, you are firm. You are very firm and very assertive in what you're saying. So if you're saying, if you don't want something, you're like, hey, do not do that, and you're given an express instruction. Some people might perceive it as you are showing off your masculinity, and that is being toxic. You know, some people would interpret you not being emotional about certain things as toxic masculinity. So as opposed to saying, please, can you help me get that phone, right? People define toxic masculinity as, hey, get that phone for me. And some people might interpret it that you're telling me to get that phone for you simply because you're a man, and you feel like you have the right, because of your gender, to command me to do something. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say.
I totally get where you're coming from. And it's not toxic masculinity. Everybody, and I think it's the way God has created each one of us, male and female. Those are the two genders. I have to make it clear, male and female, right? So a typical man would grow up, especially if you're now the firstborn and you have younger siblings, it's easier for you to give directions. It's easier for a man to give directions to his family or give directions to people that do this. It doesn't now make him toxic, right? The fact that he's giving commands or he's giving directions doesn't turn to toxicity, right? It's a situation of he wants to get things done, right? And that's how the man can carry out his activity. And that's why a lot of people now say men should have, please, don't just say go and do this. So we tell you, please go and do this, or go and do this, please, at the end of it, just to tone down this supposed toxic masculinity. Okay,
so let's get back to the family system and how fathers play a role in how men turn out today. Now, do you think that our African fathers, a typical African father that would not want to see any sign of weakness, according to him, do you think they have a role to play in how our men turn out these days? Because a lot of men cannot express their emotions simply because of the kind of background they had. What are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree. If you grew up in a normal African setting, your father and your mother, most times, most women have their mothers to easily go to say, this is happening to me, that's happening to me. But most fathers are rarely around for the child or for the male child to be able to express his emotions or talk about what he's going through at time. But the women, the mothers are able to easily guide the ladies in how they should behave. So most times you see that most men will learn behaviors, pick up traits, either from outside or from things that they see people do, not from conversations. Rarely do African men have sit-down conversations with their male children.
Okay, so we're going to quickly talk about how to fix all of this, but the statistics are very scary. A man is more likely to commit suicide. You know, the amount of men committing suicide daily, it's skyrocketing every day. So how can we fix this idea that men are not allowed to express emotions?
I think it's, I remember back in the social studies in secondary school, they will tell you that the family is the nuclear unit of society. If we can get fathers to start speaking to their sons, it's going to have a ripple effect. So imagine from generation to generation, the way I've passed it down is how generations have passed it. I've done it before now, where fathers don't create that enabling environment for their sons to speak to them. So if we start from a generation that says, okay, yes, I and my son can have good conversations. I and my son can play games together. I and my son can take a drive together. I and my son can play video games together, right? And we keep, and at that system, because a male child would normally want to bottle things up until the environment is safe enough, right? So most times your father is beating you because you have gone to go and play football, or you have gone to go and, or you have done something, and so you have just created that system of fear for that male child, right? And you see that's why most male children are close to their mothers, because rarely do their mothers beat them. I mean, most people are not going to be close to whoever is beating them, whoever is going to shout at them, right? So until we have fathers that are going to be able to create a proper balance, right? That I can whip you, but yet I can still create a good environment for you to thrive in.
Okay, now some people might also argue that sometimes the men now come off as weak, and when a man becomes too emotional, that it's on their shoulders to be a leader. Now, how do you define leadership from a male perspective? Okay,
so leadership is the ability for a person to be able to carry out certain activities and carry them out with people, right, to achieve a defined goal or a defined result. Now, where you have a man and he has set goals he wants to achieve, right, and then he's able to carry out those goals, provide proper and clear objectives on how he wants to carry out those goals, right, you can now say that that man is a leader. It doesn't necessarily have to be that he's shouting or is throwing tantrums, or aggressive. You can be quiet, right? You can be calm, and yet make things move.
Okay, I like that. Let's now talk about how sometimes men feel like their worth is tied to their financial power, how much you can afford. How can we fix this? And first of all, is it a good thing that a man's worth totally should be tied to his financial power?
Again, we're looking at a systemic problem. When you go for events, who are those that are recognized, right? So if two men park their cars side by side, one drives the latest range and one drives maybe a Corolla, right? Who are people going to look at and say, this one is doing well compared to this other guy? So it's a society. So until we have a general overall of our mindset and the way we look at life, we're going to keep going around this circle, right? Of that it's whoever has more finances that is doing well. But again, and we have to now redefine what is wealth and what is well-being, right? You can have wealth and not be happy, right? You can have so much money and then you're not happy. I think now we should look at fulfillment. What most men should chase now is: are you fulfilled? Are you happy? Can you sleep well at night? Right? Is your family thriving? Are your kids able to at least go to school, come back and say, "Daddy, this is what happened in school," right? Are you able to reach your goals and achieve your goals? Those are things that men should look out for rather than just financial strength or financial capability.
Amazing. Just very quickly, because we're almost out of time. How can we as men achieve healthier masculinity?
I would say by having good cluster of men that are in the same sector or in the same system or at the same level, right? Or
some sort of brotherhood.
Yeah. So a friend of mine, Adele, has a group called Better Man Initiative. So you could just have different groups like that. So you could all be in a group where all of you, it's easy for you to share. But most times, the problem with most of those groups, it now becomes an influence group or a show-off group. And then a demand that is just coming up might not feel so welcome or so free in that system. But those type of groups help. Or having just even one friend that you can just say, "Oh, hi, Hero, this is what I'm going through." And Hero gives support and vice versa. So having that support system would help men going forward.
You know, sometimes it's when you share a personal story that people can understand what you're going through. Has there been any points in your life that you felt less of a man? And what happened?
I won't say I felt less of a man per se, but I had a lot going on at the same time, right? So I had just started my law firm. So I was trying to understand. Before then, my dad had died. I started my law firm. I started doing my master's at the same time. So it was a lot juggling all that together. But with time and then with faith, because I'm a person of faith, it's like you pray and then you trust that you are in the right path and you just keep pushing. You can't give up. I make this joke and I say that whatever you do in this life, just eat and don't give up. Once you eat good food and don't give up. Just keep on moving.
I like that. I like that. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. I really appreciate it. And that got me a little bit emotional because I've been there as well. Mine was, as a 21-year-old, I went to meet my girlfriend's mother and father to ask for a hand in marriage. And they said that I did not have money to take care of her. And yeah, it's a real story. Well, my brother, I wish you all the best. And yes, to all the men out there, please do not feel less of a man because you simply expressed yourself. It is okay to cry sometimes. It's okay to find solace in the brotherhood. It is okay to speak to someone. Do not attempt anything bad because you can, sort of go on with life. All right? We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, Rubbing Mind will continue. Stay with us.
I am ready for your action. Just want my love. You should cut off all distraction. It's all on you now. And just give me some reaction. Just want
Welcome back. This is Rubbing Minds. Before we went on the break, we're talking about men's health. And of course, we're celebrating International Men's Day. If you have a man in your life, please buy that man a gift today. Okay? I'm serious. Just really buy that man a gift today. Now, let's move on to entertainment. Entertainment shapes how society thinks about gender, power, identity, and relationships. But the question is, are our stories equitable? For decades, TV and film have centered men as heroes, leaders, and decision makers, while women are often cast into limited roles, love interests, victims, or homemakers. Today's audience is more conscious, we are more critical, and we're more demanding. People want stories that reflect real life. Complex women, vulnerable men, balanced narratives, and characters that break stereotypes. This conversation explores how Nollywood, Afrobeat visuals, digital creators, and mainstream entertainment can move beyond gender bias to embrace storytelling that is fair, authentic, and representative. The goal is to examine the impact of outdated tropes, highlight the need for inclusive writers' room, and discuss how equity improves creativity, business, and cultural impact. To discuss this, joining me from our Lagos studio is a media personality and screenwriter, Jola Ayeye. Welcome to the program.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
How is Lagos today? How's the weather?
Lagos is Lagos. It's warm. Well, it's hot actually.
Well, I'd like to inform you that I got to Channels Television Abuja studio in 4 minutes, and I was about 5 kilometers away. Lagos people cannot relate, but that's not what the conversation is about. So, what does gender equity and representation mean to you when it comes to entertainment?
So I think there's a lot of discussion about equality and equity, and wondering if it's just semantics or people are kind of trying to find a new way to complain about the same thing, but it's quite different. So equality is making sure people have access to the same things, the same resources. And equity is making sure that people are reached according to their needs. So for instance, I'm not a very tall woman. If I needed to see what was happening over a fence and I was giving the same sort of stool as someone who is much taller, I might not actually still be able to see over the fence. What would be equitable is to make sure that the stool is sort of made to measure, make sure that I'm actually able to see over the fence, the same way someone who is taller wouldn't need such a high stool. So yeah, equity is something different, and equitable storytelling is important, and it means that people are reflected in a way that makes society think about how to make the world fairer or see what the world looks like for people from different perspectives. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
So with that definition, yes, totally. With that definition now, do you think across film, television, online content, you think all genders are equitably represented?
I would say we're making good progress. Like you did say, the audiences are getting more technical, they're more hungry, they want to see themselves reflected, they want to see life reflected. So I do think that we're making very good progress compared to where Nollywood, music, books were 20, 30, 10, even 5 years ago. And so we're working towards it because it's a gradual process. So you don't just get the kind of social change you want automatically. It takes time. People experience life differently. Opportunities open up slowly. And so everyone from screenwriters to directors and producers are learning over time how to create, explore, and present new and alternative storylines, showing people in the fullness of who they are.
So you're a screenwriter. Has there ever been a situation whereby an executive producer asked you to tweak a script simply because of his or her idea of storytelling did not exactly reflect what you wrote, especially when it comes to gender?
Not exactly. So what tends to happen, what has happened in my experience is a back and forth. So if you write something and an executive producer, a director, a producer has a different viewpoint, there does tend to be sort of like a discussion, like, why do you see it this way? And this is how I see it. This is what I believe should be happening. This is what we can't do with our budget. So very often it's a discussion, it's a back and forth. I haven't really had very many situations, if any, actually. If I'm being honest, I haven't had any situations where what I wrote doesn't end up on screen. With the intention that was had behind it. There have been changes, but there's always a discussion about why they think something needs to be changed. What do I think? Should we go back and forth? Is there something I'm not looking at? Is there something they're not looking at? And what's the aim of the story at the end of the day? So if I'm being perfectly honest, I've been lucky enough not to have that experience. But it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. In fact, it happens quite often.
Okay, so now what are the stereotypes you think we need to break or debunk when it comes to creative storytelling, especially across film and what have you, like any sort of creative space? What are the major stereotypes you think we need to break?
I think our understanding of people's intentions. I do think a lot of our storytelling has been pushed toward primarily just simple, basic moral messaging, and it doesn't allow us to explore why people do what they do and how they do what they do. So that's how you kind of end up with these one-dimensional stories. But I do think women as primarily weak or unable to lead, unable to own their own decisions, the lack of autonomy is something that I do think is important. And just the one-dimensional nature of either men or women. So seeing men as they're always strong, or they're angry, or they're basic and they're simple. Everything is straightforward. They are leaders. They don't have fears. They don't have anxieties. They don't make, their mistakes are made from a very one-dimensional place. So I do think a lot of the stereotypes I worry about always come from the idea of, I don't know, man good, woman bad, man bad, woman good. Man wants money, woman wants security. Very basic, simple ideology. And so I do think that over time, we need to get rid of those sort of stereotypes.
Okay. I like the fact that you did insinuate gender bias, in the creative space. I want to particularly talk about the music industry, So how does gender bias show up in musical lyrics, and how artists are branded and how artists are portrayed, Oh, if you're a female artist, you need to have some sort of sex appeal, and et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, a good place for that conversation would be to ask who does make these decisions about how artists are portrayed and why, who decides what women need to look like in order to be successful, who decides what sort of lyrics make sense, who decides what music videos look like. And that's why we talk about equity, not just in the end product, but in decision making. And because I'm not an artist, I can't speak on their behalf, but I do enjoy music a lot. And I just wish there was more equity in opportunity, so in behind the camera, because a lot of people do see the end product. But I always think about who are the music executives, who are the video directors, who writes the music videos, who has the final sign-off on budgets, who decides what's important, who decides how an artist looks and sounds. And those things are really important. So before we get to sort of like the end product, I always want us to discuss who starts off making these decisions and how do they get there, and how do we open up the space so that there are other types of voices who get into the room and are able to make these decisions, right? Yeah.
I like that. You did mention that we were seeing progress. This is not something that will just happen overnight. But do you think we're seeing progress enough? Do you think it's fast enough? Are we having more balanced stories, especially in the digital space? And what can we do to accelerate the progress when it comes to gender equity?
I don't think it's fast enough. I think we could be making a lot more progress in the media industry, in the digital space. And I do think it's a matter of support from not just people who consume, because a lot of onus is put on the consumers, but also who signs off on content, whether it's huge conglomerates, small businesses, whether it's government initiatives, whether it's NGOs, private institutions, being a bit more curious on how we encourage creatives on the sort of stories that we sign off on the sort of content we encourage content creators to create. I know that's a mouthful, but I do think that for the most part, to accelerate, we need to have just sort of like a collective consciousness at the executive level, from government to large and small private institutions. Yeah.
I like how you just mentioned that the people that make the decisions, the people that pump in the money, because, I mean, typically when you follow the money, that's where you would know how to influence. I feel like the biggest influencers are the people that control the money. Exactly. Now, what are your thoughts on the people that control the money, from the streamers, in terms of what kind of stories they invest in? What major role do you think they can play, and how can they precisely go about playing that role?
Well, I think the job of what I would call the big money, so like the big naira, the big dollars, is taste making.
Right.
And a difficult thing to do is to go against the grain. And I do think just having diverse voices in decisions on how marketing budget is spent, on how publicity is spent, on how CSR is amplified, is important. And so I do think the role they do have to play is sometimes going against the grain. It might not be the entirety of the budget. It might not, I don't mean turning your back on your current audience, but slowly and surely encouraging an alternative way to look at things, keeping a percentage of the budget to look, why don't we try this instead of what we've always done? Or can we ask a few more questions? Do we need to hire someone who has a different viewpoint? Do we need to have someone who's looking out to see what the pulse of the country is? What are young women thinking about at the moment? What are young men thinking about at the moment? This sort of messaging that we've had over the last 5 years, what has been the reaction? What can we do better? And just going out of their way to cultivate a diverse decision-making group will always help. It feels like a more expensive, it's not as fast, and it is a risk you're taking, but I think it does pay off in the long run all the time.
Okay, if we talk about the UN's development goals, of course, gender equality is part of it. We've had so many, out of the creative space, there's so much being done. Well, I won't say so much, because again, that's very subjective, but things are being done, right, to foster gender equality across all platforms. Now, do you think that beyond those in the creative space, do you think that these bodies, from the foundations to the several bodies all involved in pushing progress for women particularly, do you think that these bodies need to amplify their efforts? And how do you think they can get more investment for the great work that they're doing?
They're doing really good work already. I do think that more can always be done. If you're passionate about something, you will always think more can be done to amplify your interest. And I do think a ton of NGOs are doing well in terms of furthering SDGs, especially gender equality. But I will say that we could be a lot more enthusiastic about the work being done. It's easy to become pessimistic when you're not having grand dramatic changes happen across a country, across a region, across the world, in the way you want, how you want. But I do think that I do think that there is, I don't want to sound whiny, because there is a lot of good work being done. And in terms of what they can do to boost, amplify, do better, maybe just increased engagement. I think there's been a lot of doing, engagement and curiosity. So we've been doing a lot of the same things in the same way. for a very, very long time. And I do think that we need to try something different. I can't say what exactly that would be, but curiosity will help.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think you're already doing an amazing job in terms of like just pushing gender equity. So tell us more about the gender equity storytelling.
Oh, okay. So a couple of months ago, I was asked to join something called the Champions Project. It's in collaboration with CC Hub, Joy Inc., and it's been an incredible experience working with a ton of creatives on figuring out how to tell more gender equitable stories. Once you say gender equitable, by the way, people start to roll your eyes and you lose people. But the point really is figuring out how we can tell better stories. So as a podcaster, as a screenwriter, as someone who's passionate about how people see the world and how we can have a more equal world, I've worked with a ton of people in film and music, and we're talking about how we can reflect what we want to see in our writing and in our creativity, given what is already realistically happening. And so it doesn't mean that we're trying to manufacture a world out of thin air, but we're trying to see how, given how people are living at the moment and what we would like to see, what kind of stories can we tell across how people live and work, what makes them hurt, what makes them love, what their hopes and aspirations are, how we can create and amplify stories that show the fullness of humanity, so that people are encouraged to work together to create like a much better, fairer future.
I love that. And I think it's all our collective responsibility to tell gender equitable stories, because everybody is a storyteller. So long as you communicate with anybody, you are a storyteller. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for the incredible work you and your team are doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. And that's all we have for you on this edition of Rubbing Minds. I hope you did enjoy the program. My name is Hero Daniels. Until I catch you next week, hopefully in our Lagos studio. Bye for now.
Distraction, it's all on you now. And just give me some reaction. Just want